Number 3. Karen Umphrey. In 1980, 21-year-old Karen Umphrey was living in Smiths Creek, Michigan. Smiths Creek is a township close to Port Huron. Umphrey had 6 sisters and a brother. She had graduated from high school 4 years earlier. After graduating from high school, she worked as a secretary for a marine store. On the night of November 1st, 1980, Umphrey attended a party in Port Huron with her boyfriend, Fred Hill. It was a bachelor and bachelorette party for a pair of friends who were getting married the following weekend. The bachelor party was in the basement and the bachelorette party was on the main floor. Around 2 a.m., Umphrey and Hill left in her car. The plan was that Umphrey was going to drop Hill off at his home and then drive to the house where she lived with her mother. Along the way, Umphrey and Hill fought. Hill ended up getting out of the car and started walking home. Umphrey parked the car and went after him, but Hill refused to get back into the car. So Umphrey walked back towards her car alone. The next day at 12:10 p.m., the police got a phone call. 2 teenagers were hunting in a wooded area in the Port Huron State Game Area, just over 10 miles from where Umphrey and Hill had argued. They had found the dead body of a woman. She was fully dressed. There was no identification on her, and her purse was missing. Based on a class ring, she was identified as 21-year-old Karen Umphrey. She had been shot in the head. Although she was fully dressed, it was determined that she had been sexually assaulted. The police found her car parked in the same spot she left it to chase after her boyfriend. Shortly after they fought, someone in the area had called the police. They saw a man forcing a woman to get into a pickup truck close to where Umphrey had parked her car. The police believed that woman was Umphrey. Officers went to the area but didn't see anything suspicious when they arrived. Unfortunately, the police didn't feel like they had enough evidence to make an arrest, so it wasn't long before the case went cold. Nearly 42 years passed, and then the police sent some evidence to Orthram Incorporated, a private DNA company. They got a DNA profile and performed genetic genealogy. In August 2022, the police were given the name of a suspect. In January 2023, a DNA match was confirmed. The DNA belongs to 70-year-old Douglas Laming, who lived in Fort Gratiot, Michigan, which is about 10 miles from where Umphrey's body had been found 43 years earlier. Nearly a year after the match was made, on December 15, 2023, Laming was arrested. The police have not released much information about Laming. They have not said if Laming and Umphrey knew each other before the murder because they do not want to compromise the case. What they have said is that when Laming was confronted about his DNA being on the vaginal swab, he claimed that they had consensual sex. At the time of this recording, 7-year-old Douglas Laming is being held on a $2 million bail. Number 2. Eileen Truppner. On December 19, 1998, a boater found the dead body of a woman near a boat ramp in Broward County, Florida. She was face down in tall sawgrass. She had been raped and strangled to death. It was believed that she was killed the day before her body was found. There was no identification on her. She also didn't match any missing persons reports. The police released a sketch of the woman, but no one came forward to identify her. So she was labeled a Jane Doe. Unfortunately, no progress was made on the case for decades. In 2021, the case was reopened because the police were investigating unsolved murders possibly committed by serial killer Roberto Wagner Fernandez. We covered Fernandez's story in our video 3 Decades Old Cold Cases Solved in 2021 Part 4, and we'll have a link to that video at the end of this video. The DNA from the crime scene did not match Fernandez's DNA. In 2022, the Jane Doe's DNA was given to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement's Genetic Genealogy Unit. In early 2023, they identified the victim. She was 41-year-old Eileen Truppner. A few years before her murder, She had moved to Florida from Puerto Rico. Truppner was a mother of 2. Unfortunately, she suffered from terrible postpartum depression. She ended up losing custody of both her children. Truppner's family last spoke to her in August 1998, several months before she was murdered. Then, in November 2023, the police announced that they had connected DNA evidence from the sexual assault kit to an individual and charged him with murder. He was 64-year-old Lucius Boyd. When he was charged with Truppner's murder, Boyd was sitting on death row for a crime he had committed about 2 weeks before she was killed. On December 4th, 1998, 21-year-old Danya DaCosta went to church in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. She was a member of the choir. She was studying to be a pediatric nurse practitioner. She left the church at around 1 a.m. As she drove home, she ran out of gas. She walked to a nearby gas station. 2 witnesses saw her getting into a van. One thought that the van was blue, and the other thought it was burgundy. One of them said that the word hope was written on the side of it. They said that the driver was a black man in his late 30s or early 40s. This was the last time Danya DaCosta was seen alive. 3 days later, DaCosta's dead body was found. A worker found it near a dumpster in an industrial park about 20 miles from where she was last seen. Her nude body was wrapped in 2 bed sheets, a brown one and a yellow one, and a shower curtain. A plastic bag was over her head. She had been raped and stabbed more than 36 times to the chest with a screwdriver. She had also been stabbed in the head, and this was the wound that killed her. The police contacted businesses and organizations that had the word hope in their name to see if they had a van with the word hope written on it. The police had several other clues as well. Tire tracks were found on one of the bed sheets that had been wrapped around her body. Fingerprints were found on the plastic bag and shower curtain. Nearly 2 months after the murder, the police found a teal van with the word hope written on it. It was used by Hope Outreach Ministries. The owner of the van said that on the night of the murder, Lucius Boyd was using the van. Boyd was a maintenance man for the ministries. Boyd lived 2 blocks from the gas station where DaCosta was seen getting into the van. The police decided to look into Boyd's background. Boyd came from a prominent family who owned a funeral home in Fort Lauderdale. By 1998, he had been married twice and had 8 children with at least 4 different women. He also had several run-ins with the law. In 1990, Boyd got angry with his second wife because she had threatened to leave him because he had been unfaithful. He choked her to the point of unconsciousness. Boyd was arrested and given probation. In 1992, he was accused of raping a woman on a date. It was her 18th birthday. But the charges were later dropped because the woman didn't want to prosecute. On October 18, 1993, 31-year-old Roderick Bullard went to Boyd's home to get a car that belonged to his family. Bullard was the brother of one of Boyd's girlfriends. They got into an argument and Bullard hit Boyd. Boyd then stabbed the 31-year-old man to death with a large kitchen knife. Boyd was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. He went to trial in May 1994. Boyd claimed he acted in self-defense. However, he did admit that Bullard neither threatened him nor brandished a weapon. The defense lawyer pointed out that Bullard was on cocaine at the time of his death. Boyd was ultimately acquitted of the murder. In the spring of 1997, he was accused of raping one of his sister's friends. In February 1999, just before the police started investigating him for DaCosta's murder, he was acquitted of rape. At the time they were investigating him for DaCosta's murder, he was also the suspect in the disappearance of another woman. On June 28, 1998, 19-year-old Patrice Alston was seen getting into a car with Boyd. She told her family she was taking a trip with him to Winter Haven, Florida, which is about 200 miles from Fort Lauderdale. The next day, Boyd returned to Fort Lauderdale alone. Alston hasn't been seen since. so the police thought that Boyd was an excellent suspect in DaCosta's murder. The police interviewed Boyd's live-in girlfriend. She was out of town on the day of DaCosta's murder. They asked her if any bedsheets were missing, and she said 2 were, a yellow one and a brown one. The police searched the apartment. Under the bed, the carpet was saturated with blood. The blood was tested and was DaCosta's. The fingerprints on the shower curtain and plastic bag were matched to Boyd's girlfriend and her son. The tire treads on the bedsheet matched one of the tires on the van. It turned out that a screwdriver was missing from the van. The police got the same model of screwdriver and it matched the stab wounds. The police got a sample of Boyd's DNA. It was a match to DNA and semen found on DaCosta's body. On March 25, 1999, a detective confronted Boyd with the evidence. He said, "What took you so long to catch me?" Then he asked for a lawyer and stopped talking. Lucius Boyd went to trial for Danya DaCosta's murder in January 2002. He was found guilty. He was sentenced to death. The police believe that Boyd is a serial killer and he's a suspect in at least 10 unsolved murders and disappearances. On August 13, 1997, a year before Danya DaCosta was killed, the body of a woman was found next to an interstate guardrail in Palm Beach County, Florida. She had been stabbed to death. 4 months later, she was identified as 24-year-old Melissa Floyd. Floyd was addicted to crack. Boyd also abused crack and cocaine. Melissa Floyd often smoked crack near Boyd's family's funeral home. A few weeks after her body was found, a piece of identification belonging to Floyd was found on the funeral home grounds. The police have never found any physical evidence that connected him to Floyd's murder. It's also believed that he is responsible for the disappearance of 25-year-old Danielle Zakat. On February 25, 1999, Zakat left her boyfriend's apartment in Fort Lauderdale to go to a grocery store. She was never seen again. Her car was found parked and locked in front of the grocery store. Zakat had met Boyd before. She was a graphic designer and had worked on brochures for his family's funeral home business. Zakat went missing about a month before he was arrested for Danya DaCosta's murder. The police believe that Boyd used his family's funeral home to dispose of some of the bodies of his victims. At the time of this video, 65-year-old Lucius Boyd is sitting on death row at Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida. Number 1. Karen and Gordon Alexander. On the morning of April 8, 1981, 47-year-old Wyndon Alexander returned to his family's home in Texarkana, Arkansas, after working the graveyard shift at Cooper Tires Rubber Company manufacturing plant. His 2 children, 14-year-old Karen and 13-year-old Gordon, had been home alone. For the past 3 months, Gordon had been using a wheelchair because he had surgery on his hips. 34-year-old Vera Alexander, Weldon's wife and the mother of the children, was in the hospital because of mental health problems. When Weldon got home, he called 911. 13-year-old Gordon was dead in the kitchen. His throat had been slit and he had been stabbed 14 times in the face and neck and once in the hand. Karen was alive but unconscious in a bed in the living room. It was clear she was the victim of a violent attack. She was rushed to the hospital. At the hospital, it was determined that she had been beaten in the head, which resulted in skull fractures and a broken jaw. Her throat had also been slashed, and she had been stabbed multiple times in the face and the neck. One of the stab wounds went through her right eye and into her brain. Karen was in a coma for 3 days, and then she died. The police talked to Weldon. He said that when he got home, he found the screen door and front door ajar. He went into the house and found Karen with a butter knife embedded in her. He pulled the knife out and placed it on a shelf. There were no signs of a break-in or forced entry. In the house, the police found a dull butter knife they believed was the murder weapon. They did not believe that Karen was sexually assaulted, but they thought that the motive behind the murders was rape. They thought that the killer went to the house to rape Karen, or possibly her mother Vera, and didn't know that Vera was in the hospital. The police thought that the siblings knew the killer because it appeared that Karen had changed out of her nightgown into shorts and a t-shirt, so they thought that the siblings were comfortable with their killer, and before the attacks, the atmosphere was friendly. Karen was attacked first, and then the killer attacked Gordon in the kitchen. He knocked him out of his wheelchair onto the floor and stabbed him to death. Unfortunately, the case went cold very quickly. Tragically, 3 years after the murders, in March 1984, Karen and Gordon's mother, Vera, took her own life. She was 37 years old. In 1984, the police thought that they got a break in the case. In June 1983, Henry Lee Lucas was arrested in Texas. Months later, he started confessing to hundreds of murders. He claimed he had killed the Alexander siblings. In June 1984, Lucas was charged with the murders, but he never went to trial because of a lack of evidence. Lucas was later convicted of 11 murders and he was sentenced to death. In 1998, his death sentence was commuted to life in prison. Lucas later recanted most of his confessions, and many of them have been discredited. Experts say he only has 3 confirmed victims, but it's possible he committed more. He just didn't commit the nearly 600 murders he confessed to. Lucas died in prison in March 2001 at age 64. Eventually the case was assigned to Calvin Seward with the Texarkana Police Department's Criminal Investigation Division. Seward worked on the case for years. In 2012, the evidence was tested for DNA, but nothing of use was found. At one point, Seward retired, but then returned to the force. He retired again in 2022, but didn't give up investigating the murders of Karen and Gordon Alexander. He submitted and resubmitted evidence tested in 2012 for testing. This included tissue found under the siblings' fingernails and Karen's bed sheets. Seward talked to the lead investigator originally assigned to the case. He was one of the first to arrive on the scene. He gave Seward some information that changed his perspective on the case. It was believed that the siblings were attacked during the night while they were home alone. But the original investigator told Seward that when he got there, Gordon's body was cold. This means that they could have been attacked earlier in the night, possibly before Weldon left for work. Trace evidence of fibers, brass, copper, and zinc were found in the blood in Gordon's hands and on Karen's body. All those materials were found at Weldon's workplace, Cooper Tire and Rubber Company. Seward got the DNA results back. The DNA on their fingernails revealed a familial match, which means that the killer was related to them. Semen had been found on Karen's bedding. It belonged to Weldon. Weldon's fingerprints were also found on the murder weapon, but at the time it was explained away because Weldon said he had pulled the knife out of Karen's body. Seward suspected that Weldon either raped or attempted to rape his 14-year-old daughter. 13-year-old Gordon tried to stop the assault, and as Seward said, things got out of control. On October 12, 2023, Texarkana, Arkansas Police Chief Michael Cram identified Weldon as the prime suspect in the case. However, Weldon died at age 80 in 2014. Had he been alive, he would have been charged with 2 counts of capital murder. After 42 years, the Texarkana, Arkansas Police Department considers the murders of 14-year-old Karen Alexander and 13-year-old Gordon Alexander closed. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Please don't forget to check out our new channel, Paranormally Listed. There's a link on the screen now, and there's a link in the description box below this video. Well, that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.